Jimin and Jungkook on BTS' fifth album. The rumor that has ARMY talking, no one expected it to start this quietly. No teaser imaged, no dramatic press release. Just a few scattered words online, and suddenly, ARMY everywhere began asking the same question. Why do Jimin and Jungkook keep coming up whenever BTS' fifth album is mentioned? At first, it sounded like nothing. Just another fan theory floating through social media timelines. But then the conversation didn't fade. It grew. Screenshots were shared. Old interviews resurfaced. And slowly, a pattern began to form. One that felt too intentional to ignore. Because this isn't just any album. This is BTS' fifth full-length album. The comeback that represents reunion, evolution, and a brand new chapter after years of separation, solo journeys, and global anticipation. And when a moment carries this much weight, every detail suddenly matters, especially when it involves Jimin and Jungkook. From the very beginning, BTS has always moved as seven. That hasn't changed. But history shows us something interesting. Every major BTS era has its emotional center. A voice, a performance, or a connection that defines how the era feels. And as ARMY looks ahead to this next chapter, many believe the spotlight may naturally fall, once again, on Jimin and Jungkook. Not because they're being pushed forward, but because of timing. Over the past few years, both Jimin and Jungkook have undergone quiet transformations. Jungkook's solo era revealed a global pop force, confident, emotionally open, and technically sharper than ever. His voice became familiar even to listeners outside the BTS universe. Meanwhile, Jimin explored vulnerability in a different way, leaning into artistry, emotion, and raw honesty that resonated deeply with fans and critics alike. Two different paths, two different energies. Yet somehow, they kept circling the same question. What happens when they return to BTS together? That's where the rumor truly began to gain traction. Fans noticed subtle clues. The way interviews were phrased. The moments when producers spoke about contrasting emotions and dual centers within the upcoming album. Nothing direct, nothing confirmable, but enough to spark curiosity. And curiosity is powerful, especially in a fandom as observant as ARMY. As discussions grew louder, one theory stood out. Not that Jimin and Jungkook would be featured in the traditional sense, but that their presence might shape the emotional core of the album. That their voices, harmonies, or narrative roles could carry key moments that define the story BTS is about to tell. And this is where the conversation takes a deeper turn, because BTS' fifth album isn't just another release. It represents reunion after distance, reflection after growth, unity after individuality. And if that's the story being told, then voices that symbolize connection between softness and strength, vulnerability and confidence become incredibly important. For many fans, Jimin and Jungkook embody that balance. Think back to past BTS eras. Some albums leaned into intensity, others into healing. Some felt explosive, others intimate. And often, it was the interplay between members, the emotional contrast, that made those eras unforgettable. Now imagine an album that blends everything BTS has become over the years, the maturity, the scars, the hope. Suddenly, the idea of Jimin and Jungkook standing at the emotional crossroads of this album doesn't feel like a stretch. It feels natural. Still, it's important to be clear. There has been no official confirmation of special features, solos, or highlighted roles. Big Hit Music has remained focused on one message. This is a full group album, created together as BTS. Any suggestion beyond that remains speculation, and responsible fans know the difference. But here's the twist. Sometimes, the most powerful roles aren't announced, they're felt. Albums don't need press statements to tell you where the heart lies. You hear it in the chorus that hits hardest. You feel it in the bridge that makes you pause. You recognize it in the vocal color that lingers after the song ends. And that's why this rumor refuses to disappear. Because it's not about headlines, that it's about anticipation, that ARMY isn't asking whether Jimin and Jungkook will appear on the album. That's a given. They're BTS. The real question is whether this album will quietly reflect how far they've come, individually and together, in ways that redefine the group's sound moving forward as the release draws closer. Every update will be analyzed. Every word will be replayed. And whether the rumor turns out to be symbolic or literal, one thing is already clear. Expectations are sky high. Not just for Jimin, not just for Jungkook, but for what BTS, as 7, will choose to say next. And maybe that's the most exciting part, because the best BTS moments have never been about confirmation. They've been about discovery. So as ARMY waits, listens, and watches closely, one thing remains certain. This album will be talked about long after the rumors fade. And when the music finally plays, the answers won't need explaining. That if you don't want to miss the updates, the breakdowns, and the deeper meanings behind BTS' next era, make sure to stay connected. Subscribe, stay curious, and keep listening. Because with BTS, the real story always reveals itself through the music.